Ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court, state courts, or Georgia's courts within Georgia have not determined that the voting law that the governor signed that passed the state legislature is unconstitutional or immoral or unethical or criminal. They haven't, actually, there hasn't been a ruling pertaining to those new laws, yet Major League Baseball has decided to leave Georgia and move the All-Star game to another location. Why? Because just without any facts on their side, without any ruling by a judge or a court, Major League Baseball has decided to side with the Democratic Party. We don't know why. We have no clue why. But the new voting reforms, which address pandemic-related, so we will not have the pandemic 4 years from now, they address pandemic-related laws that were implemented with a great deal of pressure because science. Anyway, even Joe Biden, our beloved President Biden, got 4 Pinocchios for stating that the laws, don't allow voting after the workday, but they do. All they do is, there's one statute or one. Basically, they just say they define a workday, which is 9 to 5, which wasn't defined in the prior laws. They do a lot of other logical and rational things that early voting isn't really hampered or restricted. So of course, Democrats, for some reason, because Republicans can take advantage of this also. I'm not even going to get into it, but it's really hilarious that the antitrust exemption that Major League Baseball has is now being focused on because President Trump called for a boycott, but President Trump called for a hardline stance against Major League Baseball for siding with Democrats, blindly giving this absolute oath of allegiance to Democrats, which makes no sense. If the Supreme Court stated that Georgia's voting laws were unconstitutional, then fine. Manfred and everybody at Major League Baseball could say, you know what, we're going to move the All-Star game because this is unconstitutional, it's blatantly immoral, it restricts voting, it harms a specific group of voters. The Supreme Court or state court has voted and ruled on this, and there is a decision within a court case. And Major League Baseball, citing this court case that went against Kemp in Georgia or the Republicans, we are now going to do the moral thing and move our All-Star game. They didn't even wait. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Tell your friends about this channel where my segments are moving finally. And there's a lot going on, and this is really, really important. It might not be interesting to a lot of people. It's not John Durham, and it's not but it's really important. Major League Baseball, like other industries, have tried to side with the Democratic Party. When you side with the Democratic Party, you go broke. And here's why. Republicans call for removing MLB Antitrust Exemption in response to Georgia boycott. Hit subscribe right now. Share this segment. Do you want to know why that's hilarious? Major League Baseball is the only sport that is considered to be the only sport not considered to be a business and not bound by interstate commerce laws and antitrust laws. And you have arena football, for example. You have different, it's the only major. It's the only national sport. It's the only major league or sporting league that is exempt from antitrust laws. So what they can do is they can decide, like the minor leagues don't have a union. I don't believe they have a union, but the major league players do. But they can decide what minor league players, coaches, teams, the revenues they make, or the salaries that they make, I should say. They can engage in a sort of collusion that, even though they're not supposed to engage in collusion, they can still collude with one another in terms of salaries, in terms of perhaps a player that maybe not a star, but because the stars make a great deal of money, but maybe a person who is on the last couple years, playing in the last couple years of his career. But mainly what they can do is they can ensure that there is no other baseball league. And Trump called for a boycott, which then led to Republicans saying, hey, why does Major League Baseball have an antitrust exemption? There's no competition to Major League Baseball. There's no competition at all. I mean, you had the USFL with the NFL. You have arena leagues, which may not be a direct competition, but I mean, arena league football is interesting. You have other kind of different types of leagues. Basketball does have, although not direct competition. The NBA does have other leagues that it competes against. I mean, obviously, the point is that they're not major. It's not major competition, but baseball is is a sport where if you've provided an alternative, so there's MLB, but if you there's the NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, but Major League Baseball, you could get the best players from the Dominican, Puerto Rico, Japan, Korea, Venezuela, Mexico. If you took Cuba, if you took the best players from the national teams, or the national teams themselves, and they formed a league, you better believe that I'd be watching and you'd be watching that league. Okay, that's not like a stretch. Like, you couldn't. The NBA is like the best, but there's still like other NBA leagues. NFL arena football is interesting. Okay, but you could actually field a team that would be quite competitive if you took all the best players. Like, other leagues, because they don't have the antitrust exemption, have to kind of deal with competition. But baseball, because of the nature of baseball, like, you don't need to be 6'7", 6'8", like, or you don't have to have you don't have to be extremely fast, like this linebacker from Alabama or USC. Go Trojans! Like, you still have to be an athlete, but you could be any size. You could be, any type of athletic. You don't have to be the best athlete in the world, but you can be the best baseball player in the world. Baseball is a sport where you don't have to be one of the best athletes in the world. So you could actually form and all the talent. Like, you have talent from Japan, South Korea, Venezuela, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. You could make a league that would be competitive, because if you could get internet. So Major League Baseball has a monopoly on the internet, radio, television, cable, every media platform they have a monopoly on. And if that goes, the profits, they had $10 billion in profit, or revenue, I should say. It went from $3 billion in revenue in 2001 to $10 billion in 2020. So you have just as much talent outside the U.S. as you do, or you have almost as much or just as much talent outside the U.S. for baseball. And if you get the best players, I mean, Ichiro came from Japan, the league in Japan. I mean, you have a whole bunch of, you could make maybe not a direct competitive league, but you could take revenue away. And so you have major league players who could say who might say, okay, you know what? There was the USFL, which President Trump once was a part of. But you have the USFL. You had the USFL, but you can have a major league. You can have a baseball league that would be competitive with Major League Baseball. Why is that important? Republicans call for removing MLB antitrust exemption in response to Georgia boycott. So Democrats should not have. MLB should not have just simply sided with Democrats for no reason. Representative Jeff Duncan made the announcement on Friday afternoon, soon after MLB said it would be moving the events out of Georgia. Quote, in light of the MLB stance to undermine election integrity laws, I have instructed my staff to begin drafting legislation to remove... This is, by the way, since 1922. The Supreme Court has consistently sided with MLB, but there's no reason. See, Major League Baseball, this is the thing. You side with Democrats, you go broke. Major League Baseball has no reason to enjoy an antitrust exemption. For a number of reasons, but here, in light of MLB stance to undermine, I have instructed my staff to begin drafting legislation to remove Major League Baseball's federal antitrust exemption. The South Carolina Republicans said, an overwhelmingly bipartisan majority of Americans support requiring an ID to vote. That's, again, and any organization that abuses its power to oppose secure elections deserves increased scrutiny under the law. The issues pertaining to the Georgia voting laws are not meant to go after, anyone in particular. They are meant to address laws or meant to address guidelines that were just simply implemented because of science and the pandemic. So there was a trade-off. The trade-off, I don't even want to get into it, but here. Marco Rubio is on board, and if Marco Rubio is on board, then he's more of an establishment Republican, but Trump started it by saying just boycott MLB. I like sports, so I love sports, so I'm not going to boycott anything because I enjoy sports. Look, you look at what Major League Baseball did with the Astros cheating scandal. It's like they dropped the ball on that. It's just, look, this is a different world. This world runs by money and public relations. So now Republicans are perhaps growing a spine because Trump is starting it, saying boycott them, but more than just boycotting. If you remove the antitrust exemption, they're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars potentially in revenue. Maybe not at first. But if you had an international World Series, I mean, you do have international, but if you had, for example, you have that, but if you had a World Series in the United States that wasn't run by MLB, it would not be good for the owners, because then the top players might say, hey, look, you know what? 10, 12, 20 years from now, top players might say, hey, I'm going to go to, instead of MLB, some other league within the United States because Republicans wanted to remove the antitrust exemption. There can't be right now a direct competitor of MLB because it's just not allowed. they can be a monopoly. Isn't that hilarious? And it all started because Trump said, "Yeah, boycott," and then he was the inspiration for Republicans to then say, "Hey, wait a second, you have antitrust exemption. You're the only sport to have antitrust exemption. Why?" In 2021. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Share this segment everywhere. It's very